Okay, I think I am live. So, welcome everybody to the final of this FPL chess tournament. This isn't the Charity Chess League. This is a tournament I set up a few weeks ago. Well, it's November by now. We had a group stage, quarterfinals, semi-finals, and a final. And here we are at the final. A bit of a delay because FPL Wombat FPL had his first child over the Christmas period. So great congratulations to him. But finally we have the final. There's going to be 2 games of 15 minutes plus 10-second increment, and then some tie breaks if needed of 5 minutes and 5 seconds. I'm just going to send a message on the chat to tell them they can start. Cool. If you are here and viewing, just to say hello in the live chat, I'm going to get it up on my phone, and also just tell me that everything's working, because I want to make sure all is good and all is well. But now let's try and find the game. Hopefully they are about to start. Okay, I need to search for Henry. Here we go. So hopefully they'll start imminently. So yes, I'm going to try my best to provide the best commentary I can, but Wombat is certainly better than me, and Honey Badger probably a similar standard, but I don't know. We're close in rating anyway, so I'm not going to be giving great expert grandmaster commentary. But I'm hoping if you're a beginner, that it will be of some use and some help, and you'll learn something. And it will just be entertaining for the rest of you, maybe the higher level players, to see these two battle it out. So like I said, 2 games of 15 minutes and 10-second increment, and then 5 minutes with 5-second increment tie breaks if needed. Should be a close match. Both players are very strong, and we will hopefully see a really hard fought match. And yeah, I wonder if everyone's good. David Strom's in the chat. Hi, good to have you with us, and great to hear everything's fine, Saknik. Thank you for letting me know. And yeah, I'm wondering if everyone's watching the end of the Chelsea-Man City game. I haven't seen any of it because I was on a call before, but I have double City defence in that, so if they can hold that clean sheet, that would be brilliant. If they still have it. It was 3-0 last time I checked. Just still waiting on the players to start. But yes, anyway, if you are competing in the Charity Chess League, there will be opportunities to get your game streamed on a Monday night. Either myself or Honey Badger or both of us will provide some commentary for that. Should be really good. Okay, just need to tell them I'm all good. And we should be underway in just a moment. Looking forward to this. Okay, we're off. So we have FPL Honey Badger as white and Wombat FPL as black, playing the Slav defense. So Slav defense is when black responds to d4 and c4 by playing c6, and both players playing quickly in the opening, just playing solid chess. We'll see how this develops. Both players came through some scares in their semi-final matches, even though they were both heavy favourites. Honey Badger, I'm going to call him Isaac, actually. It's easier. He went to a tiebreak against Lenk FPL and was in a really bad position in his first tiebreak game, and could easily have lost, but he came through. And Wombat played against me, and we drew the first game, and in the second game I had a really good position, then blundered it away by losing a rook, which is very sad. Played one of the best games I've ever played, probably, but unfortunately blundered it away. So here we are. Anyway, so let's have a look at this position. So in playing a4 here, White is threatening to win the b5 pawn. You can see that the a4 pawn and the knight are both attacking it, and in doing so, he's looking to also make space on the queen side, maybe open up his rook on the a file. But b4 is a really good move from Wombat to put pressure on this knight, and in fact we saw in Isaac's second game against Lenk FPL, we had a similar sort of thing where Black's two pawns, Lenk FPL's two pawns, the b pawn and the c pawn, became really far advanced, and he eventually created a pass pawn and turned one of them into a queen and won the game. So he's got to be careful that he doesn't allow these pawns to advance too far. And now Wombat has won a pawn. In attacking this knight, he forced it to move. The knight that was here, it's had to move out the way, leaving this pawn that was protected by it unprotected. And I think that's a clean pawn for Wombat. So an exchange of knights, and I really like Wombat's position here. What you really don't like in chess is both your king side and your queen side to be wide open. So there's not really a safe spot for the king in this situation. I've lost my actual computer mouse, by the way, so trying to use the trackpad on the laptop to draw arrows is going to be a bit difficult, but I'll try my best. Okay, so I like this move, rook c1, threatening to take this c4 pawn here. But to be honest, if I was Black, I'd just probably advance it up the board. I really like the move c3. All that, okay, queen up to d5, that protects the pawn and develops the queen, gets it into the game. This bishop is looking a bit sad on f1 here. Its only square is e2 to get it developed, but it's not a very effective piece. And if Black just plays sensible moves, maybe bishop to e7 and then castling, you'll see that Black will have a very strong position. There won't really be any weaknesses in his position. What would White do here? Honestly, it's a tough position for White already. Probably could develop his queen to c2, bringing another piece in to attack the pawn. I quite like that. Yeah, knight e5 the computer doesn't like. It certainly helps having the engine bar here, so then you know when a player makes a mistake without having to work it out yourself. Why is that a mistake is the question, and I'm not sure. I guess if Black plays f6, he's going to just have to retreat it all the way back, alternatively to g5, and it's a good tempo for Black. But instead, he allows the knight to kind of stay in this really strong square in the centre of the board, e5, and pushes b3. Now the computer doesn't like that either. Certainly, it's he had the potential to potentially create a passed pawn by advancing the c pawn, and after an exchange, I would have really liked this really dangerous looking c pawn, but advancing the b pawn instead stops that. And also, another advantage of advancing the c pawn is it opens up this bishop to be really effective. But maybe he didn't want to exchange that bishop because it would have been a good bishop for Black here, really. It looks like it's hemmed in, but I think this bishop has potential, whereas this bishop's very bad, and it would have been quite a good exchange for black, to be fair. David Strom, regularly doing rockades. Is that blockades when I play? Is that a good tactic? Noticed none of the players here have done that. What do you mean by a rockade? Is that a typo? Okay, yeah. That's why the computer didn't like the move. That's actually just a free pawn. Didn't spot that. The pawn has been won back by Isaac. The knight, in moving to this central square, was attacking it a third time. It's only defended twice, so he wins it. And now we'll see this bishop exchanging itself off. No, sorry. What happened here? Yes, so the knight is exchanged for the bishop. In the process, this is good for white because he's managed to develop his bishop. But queen takes g2 is a big threat. So I don't actually think it amounts to too much. And if you're white here and you've got a really open position, so if you ever are in a position where your position is wide open, your king is in trouble, it's really good to exchange pieces off the board so that the black pieces can't all flood in a really big attack. It's going to be a tricky one for Isaac. Okay, David Strom. When you switch the tower and the king around to the side, thought it was called that. Castling. That's the English word for it. Maybe it's not the same word for you, but yes, always a good tactic. And in fact, the fact that so for example, for Wombat, castling king side, that's a really good move because the king is really, really safe behind those 3 pawns there. Yeah, almost always it's really good to castle because it gets your king to safety. The difficulty for Isaac was that both the king side and the queen side didn't really have this kind of protection of 3 different pawns, and so even if he did castle, his king would not be that safe. So I think what Isaac's got to do is just defend the best he can, maybe trade as many pieces off as possible to simplify the position. And then eventually he should be able to at least make the position roughly equal. Because in material, Wombat is 2 pawns up, which is significant, but it's not impossible for a player of Isaac's quality to still hold this position and maybe make a draw. Also, white's pieces are a lot more active, so for black it's literally just the queen that's in the game at the moment, and these 2 rooks can really get to work, control a lot of squares. So yeah, I like what's going on here with white's pieces at least. What black really needs to do is probably play something like knight to e7 next. Castling was of course really good, and then bring this rook into the game on a8. Okay, Isaac brings the rook into the game and attacks the queen in the process, and then a check is given by Wombat. And you'll notice that if we go back a second, maybe Wombat felt like he was winning a pawn, attacking both the king and the pawn at the same time, but a clever move by Isaac to stop that from happening, because then that opens up the queen to protect the pawn. Both players in their matches played really quickly. They both play a lot of blitz, which is a shorter time control than what we have, often 5-minute games, 3-minute games. So they're used to rattling off moves really, really quickly. But I think, I said this in Isaac's semi-final, I think he just needed to slow down a bit, think a bit more, and make more accurate moves. And it's a hard habit to get out of, playing quickly and playing quite instinctively. They've still got plenty of time on the clock at the moment. And this position is going to be, it's still quite a complicated position. Okay, queen to d3, c3 threatens the b3 pawn. If white could remove that pawn from the board, suddenly, that's, I'd feel a lot happier if I could capture that b3 pawn. No one likes it when a pawn becomes 1 or 2 squares away from promotion. Thankfully, though, I don't see the b2 pawn falling anytime soon, so that's not too bad. I think for now it's not a concern, but there may come a point later in the game where that pawn is actually a game winner for Wombat, so it would be amazing if Isaac could capture it at some point. So yeah, like I was saying before, black should play knight e7 to develop the knight and get the rook into the game. However, the problem with that now is before that was okay, but now we had a second piece attacking it. And in fact, he's just ignored the threat of queen takes b3. Was there a way he could have defended the pawn instead? To be fair to him, I don't think there was a way. I actually can't see a way of defending it. So well played to Isaac for spotting that and ultimately winning that pawn. That could be crucial. Which is why actually knight e7 makes a lot more sense, because it's just accepting, right, I'm going to have to lose this b3 pawn, so let's improve my position, get this knight out, and free up my rook to move later on. And in fact, the c6 pawn is currently hanging. When I say hanging, that means it can be taken for free. Because this bishop, this is a good bishop. This is a really strong bishop. Full control of this diagonal, really. But yes, this bishop along with this rook, they're both attacking. Both attacking this pawn. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like rook c8 here. Because also if that pawn moves, then that rook on a8 would be taken by the bishop, so got to take care. And actually I really like what white's done here. White's position was not good at all. Fortunately there weren't too many pieces piling up in attack. And he could stabilise things, because I was worried for him before. So he's done well, and he's still a pawn down. But this c6 pawn is weak. Pawns are. I've heard a commentator say on chess.com quite a few times when he's commentated on tournaments, like pawns' best friends are other pawns because they can protect each other. A bit like here, this pawn is not going anywhere because it's protected by this pawn. But when a pawn is isolated, meaning there are no pawns on either side, it's often weak. And so it becomes a target. More moves have happened and I hadn't even realised. Rook a to b8, attacking the queen. When the queen moves, it's going to have to stay defending this b2 pawn, so that limits its options really to a3 and c3. And c2, a2. Chooses c3. Knight f6. That's after quite a lot of thought as well by Isaac. So now, surely, white can just take this pawn. I guess the argument is, if white takes this pawn with the queen, say, after an exchange of queens, then at the end of all that, black can capture the b2 pawn, and actually, it's a pawn for pawn. Doesn't really matter too much. And the reason why you might think, well, why can't we do... Oh, I can do that. Oh, it's guessing the move, that's what it is. Why can't I do bishop c6? I mean, you can. You might win the pawn, but it's really risky because you get moves like... moves like rook to c8 coming into play. And then this bishop is pinned. Let me show the analysis board, actually. It's probably better if I do that. So, takes... I mean, it might... Yeah, you see, actually, the computer just jumped all the way in black's favour. And it is because of this pin here. If the bishop moves, the queen falls. And actually, it can be taken for free next move by the rook. If I just did a random move for white, then bye-bye. Free bishop. So, anyway, back to the live game. So he did take it with the queen. And instead of the queen exchange, he goes for bishop b4 check and then takes the pawn with the queen. So it's a pawn for a pawn. And I think Wombat will be quite pleased with that because it's a weak pawn that he's managed to exchange off. You can really see here that black is under in no danger whatsoever. You can't really see a way for white to attack here. But when all the pieces get exchanged off the board, it's good to have a central king, actually, because the king eventually will become a bit of a weapon. When there's no threat of checkmate, you want it to be in the action rather than hidden away in the corner. So we see another exchange of pawns here. Yeah, I mean, bring that rook into the attack, but I think if you're white, you just exchange off the rooks. It's no biggie. I don't think Isaac would mind the position being simplified. Like I said before, it means his king goes from being a weakness to a strength. Can someone put in the chat how the Man City game finished? Did I get my double City clean sheet? I had Diaz and Cancelo. With Stones on the bench, I wildcarded this week and decided to go for triple City defence. It's basically so I don't have to play my free hit next week. I'm going to have 10 players and then 15 later on in 19 for my bench boost. But enough of FPL. The computer really didn't like that move at all. -8, that's just clean winning for black, and it's because he's lost his bishop. Let's back up a second and show why that move was really not good. I'm not sure why he did that, to be honest. It was a bit of a nothing move, but in doing that, yeah, takes. The queen is overloaded. The queen can't defend both the rook and the bishop at the same time, and the bishop falls. And in fact, let's see. The game is finished, and white has resigned. At this level, Wombat is would never mess this up. He's too good. He's a whole rook up. And that's just too much. So you could play out. He could have played it out if he wanted to, but he'd never won. Oh, are you kidding me? 3-1. I hope that's a joke. It's not a joke, is it? Oh, I'm gonna have to check that now. I don't know whether to believe you or whether you're just saying that to annoy me. Yeah, it happened. Ugh. That was potentially game week defining because I don't own Salah and he could ruin me tomorrow. Great. Fantastic. There's nothing worse for me in FPL, apart from a captain blank, but the most annoying thing is a clean sheet wipeout in injury time. Especially a double clean sheet wipeout in injury time. Nothing more annoying. Anyway, in the second game, we're actually seeing a similar setup to last time, but the white is the player with this kind of triangle formation thing. So black has to win this, otherwise Wombat FPL will be the champion. Okay, don't think about FPL, let's think about the chess. So, in exchange of the knight for the bishop, attacking the queen's going to have to retreat, but not much to say about this position so far, really. This time, yeah, Wombat's got his king castle to safety, which is good as always, and I think Isaac will want to do the same to avoid the difficulties that he had in the previous game. Yep, moves his bishop. And I'm sure he'll castle now. Yeah. Literally the last kick. I'm glad I wasn't watching, because I don't feel any pain right now, but if I was watching the game at the time, I would be fuming too, genuinely. Oh well. Hopefully plenty of clean sheets to come in the next 2 game weeks, the 3 games that they've got. I also have Sufal and Suchek on my bench. To be honest, I should have taken more note of Everton's performance against Sheffield United, because we won the game, but we weren't very good at all. We didn't really offer much attacking threat. I think maybe because Richarlison was back, I thought maybe we'd score, but it was a very limp attacking performance. So maybe should have started Sufal, but never mind. This game feels very even at the moment. Steve Bird, this is not the same game I played. Clearly 2 top players. Yeah, these guys are good. They're very, very solid. They are very tactically alert, meaning they spot these little combination moves that often beginners miss, that win pieces. They very, very rarely just lose pieces for free. That's why it was so annoying when I did that against Wombat, because I was doing so well, and then literally, it's actually rare that these players would just give up a piece for free. So to do that was very frustrating. Okay, black. I like what black's doing here, gaining a lot of space on the queen side with these pawns. This bishop's not looking too happy on a3 at all. Even if the bishop retreats back to b2, well, what are you going to do? It's just, bishops like open diagonals, and when the game is closed and there's a lot of pieces on the board, I mean, there aren't many, but once the black bishop eventually comes to d6, I like black a lot. He's got to go for it. He's got to win this game. A draw isn't good enough. Now, knight to e4 looks good at some point. Knights on a nice central square are really good. And that's... Okay, this exchange is going to favour white. I assume he's going to exchange bishops here. So white taking this pawn. I like that a lot. Although he may actually just move bishop b2, because if he does that, now he can move this pawn, and this bishop will be opened up. But he does decide to exchange. I think that's fine. Now black is putting pressure on this c3 pawn. It's got 2 attacking, but there are 2 defending as well, the queen and the rook. So it's no big deal at the moment. Let's say this position is very, very equal. maybe black with a slight space advantage, but both kings are safe. Both pieces are similarly developed. I think black is slightly more active. White's maybe a bit more in defensive mode, but neither player has anything to worry about at the moment. Material's dead even, which probably suits Wombat. He just needs to play this game sensibly and not make any mistakes. And at worst, he'll draw the game and he'll win the whole thing. The checkmates on your bench, Steve Bird. Thanks for that. Great pun. To be honest, you're not going to get many laughs from me on puns like that. I'm someone who rolls his eyes, unfortunately, at those sorts of things. But yeah, I think I've had 3 out of his 5 goals in my team. The previous one, I took a stupid punt on Ben Rama a while ago for Jota when he got injured, and Ben Rama's just been useless. I thought he might nail down his spot in the West Ham team, but he played 0 minutes against whoever it was. Was it Palace? Might have been Palace. Whenever Souček scored last before the Everton game, and he came off the bench for a 9-pointer for me, which is really nice. And he came off the bench for Jota as well another time. So I played Rafinha over Souček this week. Hindsight says it's a mistake, but it's so easy to just think in terms of hindsight after everything's happened. So annoying, but no big deal, I guess. So what should black do to try and win this game? He probably wants to keep the position complicated and keep pieces on the board. He needs to bring his rook on f8 into the game. I don't know if he can just gain even more space and try and kind of squeeze white by... I mean, he'll expose his king a bit, but moves like f4, g4. The grandmasters know when is a good time to create this kind of storm of pawns marching up the board and when to keep them where they are. I don't know when is a good time. I suspect it might be now, but no idea. Okay, what he's doing here, rook c7 is purely so he can play rook c8. Pile even more pressure on this c2 pawn. Interesting that he decides to advance it. Doesn't that just lose a pawn? Maybe not. Takes. I've got to go to the analysis board to look at this, I think. Okay, well, takes here isn't an option because that loses the queen, so be careful. Takes here. What's that? Does that amount to much? Again, I guess you can just take here. No, you can't just take here. And again, you can't take back, so I don't know. Clearly the computer doesn't like taking the pawn. Well, he does like taking the pawn this way. But I wonder if the move is just to play rook c8. Probably. And I think that would lose this pawn. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that move is a mistake because of those sequences that I've showed you. He should lose the pawn in the end. What would be better is probably rook c2 because he can just bring this rook as an extra defender. But now this rook can't defend in time. I think it just goes. I think the pawn just goes. You can move knight here, but an exchange of knights later, and black still wins the pawn. Let's see what happened in the game. Lots happened in the game. My apologies. Let's go back. Oh. My bad. I wasn't taking into account that this knight defends the queen, so it's actually not as disastrous as it looks, but the computer doesn't like it at all because he drops the knight. Oh dear. Oh dear. So I was wrong. It doesn't drop the queen, but it does drop the knight because now it's undefended. It was defended by the pawn before. This is game over, I say. Yeah, there's no way back for Honey Badger here. And just look how much time they have on the clock. I know it's going to sound like a bit of a criticism, but when you've got all that time on the clock to miss something like that, Honey Badger will be kicking himself. Isaac will be kicking himself because he shouldn't be missing something like that. That's a really bad mistake for him. To spot that his knight was, by taking the pawn with the D pawn, he was just going to leave the knight undefended. That's he wouldn't do that often normally, but I think he's playing it out because he has to win this game. So he's got to try something. But okay, Wombat doesn't have any of it. He's not having any of it. He's just going to try and exchange queens, basically. Just exchange queens. The only concern with exchanging queens is this pawn could start running, but no big deal. Okay, what's coming is rook here. When you're up material, you just want to exchange pieces, really. Okay, no, that's no good. It doesn't work. Never mind. I was thinking he could do rook to c8 in a second. Just play around and move for black. But actually, that's bad. Because you think, oh, I can just exchange, but actually then the queen is dropped. So, never mind. Never mind. I don't think there's anything black can try here to win this game, to be honest. I think Wombat's firmly in control. Up a piece, up a knight. Eventually, what will happen? If you were to exchange off all the pawns, then a knight against a lone king doesn't win. You can't checkmate with a king and a knight against a king. So there's a very slight chance you can hold this by just exchanging off as many pawns as possible. But there will come a point where that extra knight will mean that he'll be able to eventually pick off black's pawns, and then one of white's pawns will advance up the board and be promoted to a queen. So it's going to take a blunder, I feel, from Wombat in this game. Yeah, it all went wrong in this moment. This was the moment where black went from actually having a good position, a really good position, to just fully losing. So I just want to go back and analyse this a little bit more. Takes. Because, I was saying, no, you can't do takes. So you can't do takes, not because it loses the queen, like I was saying, but because the knight's defending it, but it loses the knight. So you can't do that. But piling on the pressure here, let's do this for a second. What can white do here? Anything to defend it? Probably just play something like this and just accept you're going to lose the pawn. And black's actually looking really good here. I like black's position an awful lot. His knight's in a brilliant central square. His rooks are coordinating. They're doubled up on the C file. It's a great position, and he's a pawn up. But so it's a shame. It's a shame to see that mistake being made. Okay, queen c2. Again, I think all he's trying to do is exchange off the queens. He doesn't want any attacks coming his way. He wants to make the position as simple as possible. Oh, thanks, Steve. I'm glad you found that educational. Good. this is only the second time I've tried commentating, and I don't know if I'm doing a great job at it. So it's nice to hear those comments. Trying to kind of analyse the position whilst talking and not stopping talking is quite hard. But I'm hoping in future I'll do some with joint with Isaac, because that'll be two of us. We can share the talking and we can maybe analyse the positions a bit more deeply. So it might be a bit easier doing it that way. But really glad to hear that you found that useful. It's great. So I think they are going to play this out for a bit. It's going to take a while and it's going to be slow, but eventually White is going to overcome Black with this extra knight. But it's going to take a bit of time. He's just going to start slowly advancing his pawns up the board, bring the king up with them, and eventually, when these pawns start facing off against each other, kind of around the 4th and 5th ranks, White is going to find a way to win 1 or 2 pawns. And in fact, even better than that, it's probably quicker and cleaner this way. But White is now going to win the b4 pawn because the knight and the queen are attacking it. So only got one defender, that's the queen. And then actually, suddenly, there'll be action on this side of the board, but there's also going to be action. Black's also got to stop this b pawn from running up the board. And he's not going to be able to do both at the same time. Black can pool all his resources in stopping this b pawn, but then White can just maybe win a pawn on the king side here. I suspect this game will be over very soon. Last throw of the dice for White, attacking this d7 pawn. And actually, let me show you something. If Black just ignored this threat, this is a draw. Is it a draw? Maybe it's not a draw. I thought it might be. Hang on, let me do a different move to that. Nope. I'm being stupid. Ignore me. For some reason, I had it in my head that that White was the one that was playing for a draw and not a win. Never mind. Ignore me. I'm just having a moment of madness. Okay, Black is threatening. Okay, for a second I thought Black had won this pawn back, but he was attacking both the knight and the pawn at the same time. But thankfully, the knight could move here and defend the pawn, and it's defended itself. So all is well for Wombat. Again, offering the exchange of queens. He's not going to take it, I can tell you that. He's not going to take it. Yeah, people saying Soucek's the best. Never bench Soucek. He feels like the Lundstrom of this year. Maybe not quite as good, but if there's one kind of budget FPL legend from this season, it has to be him, doesn't it? There's always one every season. At the start of the season, I wasn't having any of it. Seeing everyone on Twitter going crazy about him, and I was like, no. He's never going to score enough goals to be, as a defensive midfielder. I clearly hadn't watched enough West Ham, but when it came to my wild card in game week 6, I thought I'd better have him in, just in case, which was good. So I was proven wrong on that one. I wonder if there's a really clean knockout blow for Wombat, or whether he's just got to keep going with the slow plan. But he has won a pawn on the king side as well, so it's 5 pawns against 3. The extra knight as well is just too much, really. Just too much. Okay, tactic for you all. It doesn't work. Never mind. It doesn't work. I'm just going to put the queen over here because I want to show you something. Like, let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend for a second that the queen's here. Knight to e6. If you're thinking, what on earth? I just lose my knight. The queen falls. It doesn't work because when the queen is over here, it doesn't matter because he's defending the square anyway. But as you can see, the game's over. How did it finish? Yeah. So the reason he resigned here was, in a sense, not much has changed, but by checking the king, he's basically saying he's checking the king, and attacking the queen at the same time. He's saying you're going to lose your queen unless you exchange queens off. So you're forced into exchanging queens, and there is just no way of defending against this. The king can come over here to start defending the pawn, or kind of get close to the pawn, stop it from promoting, but eventually this knight's just going to take one of these pawns. Both of these pawns, and then the pawns will advance on this side. Game over. Great. So we're done. Yeah, well played to FPL Wombat FPL rather. You have won this little tournament that we had. No prize, unfortunately, but yeah, he was the favourite coming into the competition. He's the strongest player, and he has delivered. He has won, despite the challenges of having a newborn child. Congratulations again. And yeah, so that concludes that tournament. But for those of you who are in the Charity FPL Chess League, I hope you really enjoy that competition. And do let me know if you want any games streamed on Monday nights. There may be the odd Sunday as well that might be good for both of us. We'll see. But that will be judged on a week-to-week basis. So, yeah. And if you aren't in the Charity FPL Chess League, I'm sorry. You will have to wait until Season 2, which will, if we do have one and there's enough interest, we'll do a second season. And there'll be promotion and relegation from the leagues that we've got at the moment, and we'll have new entries for that as well. FPL Glasto, don't worry. It's going to be up on YouTube in a second, so you can watch it back. But you do know the result now, which is sad. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, I played my first match actually against. Is it Chaz? Is that his first name? FF Scout as our Division 1 match, and we drew 1-1. We won a game apiece, which was good. All right, I'll stop talking now and let you get on with your evenings. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you have a good rest of the game week. Actually, I don't, because I don't own Salah, and you probably all do. So I hope Salah blanks. Yeah, Happy New Year, and I'll see you all soon.